Hey everybody, welcome back. Whether you're new here or a returning fan, it's great to see you again. So, this episode, if you'll remember a couple of weeks back, I did a deep dive into the perfect recall method. Remember the resistance is futile guy? I told you he had other videos that we would look at, and this episode is part 2 of that series. So this episode will be a little different. Normally, I show the video, play it all the way through, and then we go back and look at it again together. This time, we're going to look at it together the first time through because the length of his video is longer, and I promise you, you do not want to watch this twice. I've got another thing coming up too that I want to tell you is that he sort of trademarked his method, we'll say. And I have censored that out. So you'll hear the censored word and it's the actual name of his method. So without further ado, let's get started.
Show you the process with a recall from Prince right now. Prince, come! Good boy, Princey, good boy. That was
So for you guys who are coming to us on the podcast version and not the video version, I'm going to try to explain what it is we're seeing on the video, but you really may want to jump over to the video at some point on YouTube so that you can see. There's no way to describe exactly everything that you see, so it may be fun to watch as well. What we saw was he left his dog on a sit stay with the camera person that the dog knows. So it wasn't an out of sight sit stay, and it really wasn't a long distance sit stay either because he knew the person who was there with him. He called him to him over a pretty good distance. His dog did come when called.
the finished product of recall. I'm going to show you the ugly process to train a recall, though.
Why does it have to be ugly?
With the method, you're going to see it with a random dog. At the beginning of the video, the dog is running away from me, like you guys comment that your dogs do. Runs away like it's a big game. I found a dog that's going to run away from me like it's a big game. Then I'm going to show you the process. You want that? You want the sexy stuff where you see the video of the dog with all these channels just coming from super far away? You don't get, I want to show you the process for that, okay? I don't just want to show you the finished product. This is the ugly process on how you get there. That's the video. Recall method. I'm going to show you what to do when you call your dog, when you say come to your dog, and they don't come to you. Many of you know I employ and I tell you to do the method. What is the method? The method is you've trained the dog to come to you. You've trained them in your house, in your backyard, in an undistracted environment.
Hey, wait a minute. Didn't he say on his other video that he didn't have time for all that? Guys, if you haven't watched the part 1 of this video, now would be a great time to stop, go back, watch that video, and then these inside jokes that we are laughing about on this one will make way more sense.
You say come, you present your hand, gives them a place to go. They come to you, you give them a treat. It is trained. That does not mean if they're young or if they're distracted that they're going to come to you in the real world. But you know, if you're in the real world and you've trained them to come and they don't come, they're blowing you off.
Okay, I'm going to read that script back to you. He said, you say come, you present your hand, it gives them a place to go. They come to you, you give them a treat. It is trained. Is it, though? Is that trained? I would say they are trained to come to your hand for a treat, okay? That is the literal first step of teaching a recall, not the final step. He says that does not mean if they're young or if they're distracted that they're going to come to you in the real world. But you know, if you're in the real world and you've trained them to come and they don't come, they're blowing you off. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. He's saying that if you do step one, teaching a dog to come to you for a treat, that they are trained. What he's telling you to do is to go from step one of teaching the dog to come to your hand to get a treat as a recall to throwing distance and distractions at them and not using equipment that could prevent disaster and would set you up for success. As you're about to see, he goes from literally step one of teaching the dog to come when called to punishing the dog because you should assume if you've done step one that the dog is trained around distance and distractions, whether you've done them or not. And therefore, they're blowing you off. It just really doesn't make a lot of sense.
They're saying, no, I know what to do, but I'm not going to do it. That is when you start the method, when they are not doing it, even though they heard you and even though they have been trained the behavior. So I now have the whole property open because a lot of you guys say, well, I can't go get my dog. My backyard's too big. This is an acre. Pool's open, pasture's open, Nala's running around on there. I'm going to get Nala, and I'm going to do it on camera for you if Nala does not come to me, which means you can do it. If you're an able-bodied person, you can go get your dog. If you're not able-bodied, yeah, it's hard. If you have a giant canyon like Southern California does, yeah, it's kind of hard. I would go up in the canyon, if I lived in a canyon, and I would get my dog because I know how important it is. When I say come and the dog says, no, I don't feel like it, I know how important it is to get that dog.
Now, how realistic is all that? I mean, really, how realistic is that scenario that if you lived in like Southern California, that you would go up into a canyon and get the dog? I would say it would be way more prudent to not turn the dog loose off leash in a canyon in order to teach them.
If you want a reliable and a perfect recall, treats, e-collars, they are not the answer to a great recall. Well, that e-collars can work. I don't use them, so I do this method. You don't want to use them, do this method. A lot of you comment on, oh, my property's too big, I can't get him. And a lot of you say, my dog runs away from me like it's a game. You know how many times dogs run away from me like it's a game when I start the go get, the pursuit of the method? They do it one time, and then they never do it again.
So he's saying that if you do this, what he's about to tell you to do, his method, that you only have to do it once, then the dog is never going to do it again. Pay attention to what he is chattering on about. Then when we get to a part later in this video, um just remember that he said that.
I'm not saying they come to me perfectly the second time I ask the dog to come, but I'll tell you what they don't do. They don't keep running away from me because I'm heading out after you, I'm getting you, and when I grab you, when I corner you, and then I get you, you're going to feel the energy in my arm.
I don't know about you guys, but I am definitely feeling his energy.
And then that gets rid of, it's a game running away from mom. You first have to get rid of that. Then you can get them coming to you. Ready? Nala's way down there with Prince. Okay? Nala, come!
Playing the game of chase is a very real problem when it comes to teaching come when called, and it is because the game itself is a lot of fun. When he talks about not wanting to use long lines and things like that, and wanting to make these big jumps in training where you only have to do these easy little things, even though they're ugly, and your dog will never do it again, it's simply not realistic. The use of a long line can stop any kind of chase keep away game, and you shouldn't progress so fast that the dog wants to play the keep away game anyway. And as I said in the first video, what the dog is being punished for is for allowing themselves to be grabbed. So it could be that if you call your dog to you and they come to you, but then you do something that they don't like, the next time you call them, they're not going to want to come to you because you did something they don't like or you punished them. And that causes them to not want to be grabbed. They're able to evade you and run around, play the chase game. It's powerful because it's twofold. First, they're getting rewarded for not coming to you or not allowing themselves to be grabbed. They keep doing whatever they were doing. They were able to escape that for a little bit longer, doing what they wanted to for a little bit longer. Then, when you come after them, the game of chase is also rewarding because it's a very fun game for the dogs. And so you've got two different things going on. So with him, I do agree that you have to get rid of that chase game, but we disagree on how it should be done. In case you are listening on the podcast and not watching the video, he just called the dog to come. Nothing happened.
Nala, come. Oh, what a good girl. What a good girl. So if your dog does this, then we are going to get her. And we're going to talk through this whole deal and talk about this process because some of you have questions about this process.
So what just happened was he called the first time, she ignored him or whatever. She didn't respond to the command. He called her a second time and she started coming. So he said, "Good girl." And somewhere along the way, she got distracted by something and she stopped. So he is now walking down to get her.
So I'm not mad. I am not chasing the dog. I am slowly pursuing the dog.
We drive in a white or light colored Ford Bronco. Just like a possibly orbit use caution.
For all you youngins out there that did not immediately get the reference, do a little trivia searching and run the date June 17th of 1994 and find out what happened on that day, and it will immediately make sense.
Now, if too much time has elapsed between me asking and by the time I get her, I'm going to give her another shot to do this behavior because she's not going to understand if too much time has elapsed. She's a dog. They just don't get it.
On this, we agree. There are studies that show that the behavior and the consequence have to be close together, or the learning is lost. They don't associate the two.
Hi, Nala. Good girl. If I had treats, I maybe would give her a treat. She never really chose to come to me, but she didn't really avoid me either.
So his reasoning is really confusing here. He said if he had treats, he maybe would give her a treat because she never really chose to come, but she didn't really avoid him either. So even there, he is kind of like, what is he rewarding? What does he think he's rewarding? I guess what bothers me so much is that this guy is constantly setting himself up for failure. He likes to say, "I don't use long lines, I don't do this, I don't do that," because we don't have time for that. But he sets himself up for failure by not using equipment to his advantage.
Okay, Nala. Okay, we're going to do it again. So I'm going to create distance and then I'm going to call her. If she doesn't come, I'm going to go get her. Somewhat distracted environment, right? Look at her.
It's actually not a very distracting environment. It would be if the dog didn't know him and had never been there, but it is very clear from her interactions that she does know where she is and she has at least met him before. I would suspect this is not even her first training session in that area. And at the beginning of the video, he said that it was just some random dog. It's not some random dog. It is a client. By virtue of that, That client's dog has been worked in this environment. He's trying to say that you can just take off the leash and add distractions and distance. And if you do what he says, you'll get a perfect recall.
And I'm not going to give like the greatest cue ever. Dogs just come to me when I give them that certain cue. I put my hand down, I give the cue right, I give it when they're looking at me, and they just do a good recall. But
I wonder what women do. My husband would probably learn to love this method if it would work on me.
doing a perfect recall is not good for this video. But dogs just do really pretty good recalls. I want her to not do the behavior. So you guys can see what you do when the dog doesn't do the behavior. So I'm gonna give like a boring cue. Oh my gosh, Nala, go play with your friend. Nala, come. Ah, she did not come to me. Oh, it's a big game. It's a big game.
Remember when he said he wasn't going to chase the dog? Well, I think when you're actually jogging or running, that constitutes chasing. That last move either was some great flag football moves, or if you can imagine a dog playing basketball and doing the, fake out, that's what just happened.
Sit. 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 Stay.
And so the moral of the story up to now is repeat commands, set yourself up for failure, chase the dog, and when all else fails, abandon doing his method and just give the dog another command entirely. Oh, and you have to do that one multiple times because the dog doesn't follow that one on the first try either.
Okay. So there was a tinge of, now look at the lip licks. Okay, now let's see if this changes her. I pursued, and I'm glad that happened because that's what you guys do. It only felt right in a 5,000 square foot area to redirect her brain and tell her sit. I still wasn't like, oh, thanks for sitting, because I just saw a minute of avoiding and weird little growls, and everything's a big game.
So he's saying that was a minute of running around with him, chasing her and doing other things. The video was definitely cut off. I think he edited out all that happened during that time, probably for brevity and to make his video look better. Just keep in mind that he chased her around or did whatever he did by his own admission for a minute before he could get her to sit.
So this is not fun time. I don't care that she sat. She knows that this punishment, which it really isn't, is for everything being a big ass game to her. Okay? Okay. Now, let's see if the next recall, I'm not saying it should come to me perfectly, but you got to get rid of the game part. So let's see if it's a big game. Nala, come. Nala, come.
At the beginning, when I said to remember all that he was prattling on about, well, if you don't quite remember his exact words, let me help you out.
A lot of you comment on, oh, my property's too big, I can't get him. And a lot of you say, my dog runs away from me like it's a game. You know how many times dogs run away from me like it's a game when I start the pursuit of the method? They do it one time and then they never do it again. I'm not saying they come to me perfectly the second time I ask the dog to come, but I'll tell you what they don't do. They don't keep running away from me. Sit. Good girl. Sit.
So there was a huge break in that video where the last thing we see is her taking off, burning rubber, leaving him in the dust. And next thing you know, the video's completely cut off, and there's no telling how many reps happened before the video cuts back on where he can finally get her to not run from him again.
Okay. Nala, come. Come. Good. Good girl. Good girl. There was a little bit of learned helplessness in this last one. Was it great? No, it wasn't great. But was it a game anymore? No, it wasn't a game anymore. Did you see her ears pin? And then her just kind of go, this crazy guy's going to come get me. When I was pursuing her here, there was, for the first time, I didn't ask her to sit, I don't think. The first time there was a little shift and come towards me. I at least eliminated it's a game part of things. I at least eliminated that. Now, next step is just, which we're close to, after 3 recalls, we are close to her going, okay, I'll just come to you. Oh, but Joel, why don't you just use treats? Yeah, well, you're not watching this channel because treats work 100% of the time. There's other channels for that, and they're not going to do it at a dog park, and they're not going to show you the process, and they're not going to show it with distractions.
I would like to respectfully point out that he isn't at a dog park either, and he isn't showing it with distractions either.
This is an acre with Prince. It's a fairly distracted area. Okay, let's see if she comes. Nala, come. Good girl. Good girl. Good girl. Was it a happy, I'm going to come to you? That was so good, Nala. That was so good. Was it a, oh my God, I'm so excited to come to you? No, it wasn't. I don't care. And you don't care. Would I rather have a 100% recall where they're, good girl, where they're so happy to get to me? Yes. But you're probably not going to get it, because treats or pets are never going to compete with the dog park, or compete with that squirrel, or compete with the smells in a forest, or it's going to take a long time.
And you using his method of chasing them down is also not going to compete with that. Again, if you haven't listened to or watched the video of the first part of this, go back and do that, because I did explain how treats could work and that they could compete with other things.
You guys need 100% recall soon. And for the dog, when Prince comes to me, sometimes his ears print, he's just going, okay, I know the guy's going to come get me. Who cares? There's certain behaviors that learned helplessness is fine with. Recall is the main one. So don't believe me? Want your dog to come to you all excited and think it's the greatest thing in the world? Great. Go to other videos and go to other trainers, and always have long leashes and always have treats. Or do this method, eliminate both of those things, and your dog is just a little like, okay, I'll go to that guy. Good girl. Who cares? Let your dog be happy and do everything with excitement 99% of the time. Then that 1% of its life, when you say come, and it goes, okay, I'll just go to that guy, let them be not the happiest they've ever been. Who cares? It's one behavior, and you ask it a few times a day, and we expect it to happen, and this is how it's going to happen. That is your questions answered on the method. You saw it in action. I'm doing it just like you should be doing it. I did it on an acre. Your house, your yard is probably not this big with this many nooks and crannies. All right? How to get your dog coming to you when they blow you off.
So there it is. That's my take on his perfect recall demonstration video. And there are a couple of things that I would like to say. First, he throws out a term called learned helplessness. Now, there is a definition, and I'm sure you guys were wondering what he was referring to. I chose not to go into that because it's really longer than what I wanted to cover in this video, but I will go over it in additional videos in the future. The other thing is, he says you have to have a long line forever, you have to have treats forever. That's actually not true. I don't necessarily give my dogs treats every single time they come. It's more on a random reinforcement schedule, so they know that coming to me is always a good thing, but it's not necessarily done with a pocket full of treats all the time. So he's doing one of those things like the infomercials. If you don't know what an infomercial is, you need to go run those on the internet because they're so exaggerated. Like, oh, if you can't do this, oh, we have the perfect gadget for you. And that, I feel like his method is sort of exactly that, where he is making a huge deal out of long lines and using food when it's just not accurate information. And he's feeding you his inaccurate information, but he's doing it with confidence, and it makes him appear to be well-versed and very knowledgeable about the subject, and he gets you because he tells you what you want to hear. But then if you really pay attention, it's quite obvious that he's promising something that even he can't make. So another thing that bothers me is that this man has 569,000 subscribers. And folks, if you don't know, he is monetized because he has that number of subscribers. So do a girl a favor. Subscribe, please. Also, I have a podcast on door dashing, and it really falls in line with this video because it identifies some of the distractors and ways to diminish the distractions so that working with Come When Called is better and easier for you to do. And so instead of just taking this guy's word for it that you'll have to have long lines and food for the rest of your dog's life in order to get a Come When Called if you use food, why don't you go over to that podcast and check that out? So for you guys who don't know, I've also put a link to my podcast in the video description as well. So hop on over, check that out. And if you haven't watched the first episode on this, then you definitely want to go back and watch that because I didn't go into a lot of detail about things that I covered in the first episode. So that is my take on his video of the perfect recall method demonstration. I hope you've enjoyed it today. Again, like, subscribe, hop on over to the podcast and review what's over there. I've enjoyed providing you with the information, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.